All right. You guys know how this thing goes. The review session is now beginning. I told everybody that they're going to talk about it on First Take, Second Take, Third Take, and all of those shows. So let's get into details of what they're going to talk about. I haven't seen the entire video. I'm just going to play it, and then I'm going to give you guys my thoughts and my reactions of it. But this is on Undisputed. It looks like they got Shay Sharp, Skip Bayless, and Orlando Scandrick. They're going to give their grades of Dan Quinn. Remember, I'm holding back. I'm not going to give out mines. I'm just going to see how this thing all unfolds. But let's listen into what they have to say about this whole situation of bringing in Dan Quinn.
Is history and finished with the 31st ranked run defense in the NFL. We're now joined by former Cowboy Orlando Scandrick. Orlando, give this hire a letter grade for us, please.
I'm gonna give it a C plus, maybe a B minus. Me and Sharp talked about this before. When you get to hiring and giving people jobs.
Hey, a B minus. This is from Orlando Scandrick. B minus not that bad. C plus, but B minus not that bad. It's above average. It's above average. C's are average, right? Well, it's right at average, basically. So we will see what he's gonna break down.
Based off of what they did in the past. I mean, that's you get into like deep waters. But my biggest thing with Dan Quinn is he's fired several defensive coordinators. He was a defensive-minded coach when he went to Atlanta, and he's most remembered for his meltdowns. Another thing with Dallas, they need to add some pieces. They don't have many secondary pieces. They need some interior defensive linemen, and they can add another linebacker. And I just don't know how much of that he can fix. He likes to play cover three, and years ago when they brought cover three into the league with that match three with Seattle, they kind of took the league by surprise with Earl Thomas, Cam Chancellor, Rich Sherman, Brandon Browner, and they just don't have those pieces in Dallas.
Facts.
I gave it a C also because I don't know if people realize on the team that the guy they just fired a couple of years ago, Chris Richard was the defensive back coach. Facts. He ran the same system. Actually, this is Gus Bradley's system.
It is.
And
I agree. Thank you for saying that because he originated.
Right.
Yes.
Actually, it's Monty Kiffin, but that's a story of a different day. Let's see how we can really unfold this defense when we're talking about match three, cover three, or when you're talking about the fact that, yes, defense do win championships and throwing in a new wrinkle where a lot of people were not familiar with or not recognizable of what the type of scheme that you were running and operating. But I think that what the Seattle Seahawks did, they had those long corners, right? And Earl, he was always a rangy safety guy. And then they had the enforcer and Cam Chancellor. So when we look at all of those complex of the actual defensive side of the ball, we can say, yeah, man, that was unique. It was before its time. And I believe a lot of people grew off of that particular formality and they learned from it. But let's see what they have to say.
Well, no, if you want to go back further, it's not Gus Bradley's system.
But Gus brought it with cover one. Gus played the cover one, what we used to call it a little older. We called it cover one lurk. They called it cover one robber. And as you mentioned, you had Sherm, you had Cam, you had Earl Thomas. I just want to know who in Dallas is Bobby Wagner? Which one of the middle guys is Bobby Wagner?
That's what we've been saying, like, who's going to be the Bobby Wagner role, right? And then on top of that, how can I put this? Yes, the draft is right around the corner. And yes, we can look at this Earl Thomas news of that everybody's saying, hey, can you reunite Earl Thomas with Quinn, right? You didn't want to do it even when we had Chris Richard. So why would you go all of a sudden going to do it now when you have Quinn? Now, on top of that, looking at everything from A to Z, that will be an older Earl Thomas. How about in this particular draft, you find your Earl Thomas in this draft? Or you look at it and say, okay, there's water under the bridge. We've been going back and forth with the Earl Thomas scenario with the Dallas Cowboys. Let that ship sail, basically. But let me see what Shay Sharp have to say more about this.
Jalen Smith is.
He might got the same number, but that's where it stops. And that's the thing that you have to understand. Because and if they play well, that means they underperform under Chris Richard. And if they don't, I just like O was saying, Dan Quinn, Skip, he had a 25-point lead in the Super Bowl. And you look at this, he had a 19-point lead against the Cowboys. He had a 17-point lead against the Bears. He had a big lead. He had a lead against the what? At some point in time, as O said, he's a defensive-minded coach, and his defenses keep giving up big leads. The same thing that you guys said about Mike Nolan. Last time Mike Nolan was the defensive coordinator, his teams did bad. He got a job.
And by the way, that was also in Atlanta.
Dan Quinn got a job based off of what? That was many years that he was the coach in Seattle. And those guys were in their prime. That's a prime Sherm. That's a prime Earl Thomas. That's a prime Cam Chancellor and Bobby Wagner and KJ Wright. We ain't got none of that there.
We can take it a step further. They also had Chris Clemens, who was, he was great at what they asked him to do. They had Brandon Meebane and Red Bryant playing that strong side defensive end. You have to have big defensive linemen. If you want to play a one-gap defense, Sharp, Skip, you know this. You covered it. You want to play a one-gap defense, everybody got to do their job.
You got to have
everybody got to do their job. Yeah. Meebane was a big boy inside, and I think that was really the unsung hero of that particular Legion of Boom. Just like when we go all the way back to the 90s, it was Russell Maryland for our Dallas Cowboys. And Russell Maryland get really no praises, right? He's so underrated that a lot of people fail to realize that we had that big plug inside. And shout out to Tony Tolbert. He was really another guy that was underrated, and Jim Jeffcoat. Those guys were really underrated. But when we look at everything for this new team as it relates to the Dallas Cowboys, our interior is just in shambles. Shout out to Antoine Woods. He's an effort, fight hard guy, but let's be real with it. I think that there's 31 other teams that will be looking at it like, nah, we good, we cool. But for us, hey, we holding on to them. Now, Barmore is in this draft, right? Barmore is in this draft, right? We'll see how this Cowboys team operate, but you will need a guy that can shoot up the gap and physical enough to make something happen. And I'm talking about big and physical. Now, Barmore, he's like 6'5", 310, 315-ish. That's a big boy. So we probably have to find somebody like that that's athletic. Now, I'm not saying that you squeeze out with the 10th overall draft pick and you go grab a Barmore. But what I'm saying is that they will have to actually invest in that interior, get some big meat inside. And on top of that, they cannot sneeze at the linebacking position that we got a big hole in because of our talent that we already have. And on top of that, safety. So those three things pretty much in the interior of this defense, Quinn got a lot of homework to do. He do.
Hellraisers.
Yeah.
So, Orlando, before we move on, who originated this defense? You didn't finish your point before Gus Bradley.
Kiffin. It's an evolution of Monty Kiffin. Monty Kiffin brought the cover 2 into the league.
No.
No one could figure it out.
But that's more Tampa.
You talking about Tampa, too. Yeah.
But Monty gave Gus Bradley his first job. Monty was the one who recommended Gus Bradley get the job for Pete Carroll. And then he took from playing cover 2, and then he started to use that 2-shell safety and drop them down and play cover 3. And then they got these big, long defensive backs from Seattle that can play these cover 3 zones because they can close these windows. They don't have those guys in Dallas.
And you can play that coverage when you got Warren Sapp, Derrick Brooks, Simeon Wright. Yeah, you can play you can play whatever you want.
Actually, everybody knows that Pete Carroll's a defensive mind. When Pete Carroll was with the Jets, he played a little bit of this one lurk, a little bit of this cover 3.
Yep.
Well,
okay.
I like it.
I'm going to give this move, as a lifelong Cowboy fan, a C+. I'm going all the way up to plus.
But you gave it a C, though.
And why do I go C+?
Why?
The only silver lining here is that McCarthy brought in 2 of his ex-assistants who were with him on the defensive side in Green Bay, George Witt Jr. and Jason Simmons. I don't know much about either, but they were 2 of the primary candidates. He wanted to go old. I want to go back to what I knew in Green Bay. I'm still not sure about Mike McCarthy, what he was doing. You're starting to convince me. I think he was a product of Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre before that. So my point is, At least he didn't get to go back in time to what he knew in Green Bay. At least with Dan Quinn, he has no relationship with Mike McCarthy at all. So at least that's a clean slate. And at least Dan Quinn will come in as the unquestioned head coach of the defense, because he's been the head coach of the defense in Atlanta for what that's worth, and that's not worth very much. From what I know of Dan Quinn, he's a good guy. He's high energy. He's sort of a Pete Carroll clone a little bit, you know, and his specialty is the defensive line. So they will go back to conventional four-down linemen. And DeMarcus won't have to be standing up saying, what do I do now? What do I? He will put his hand in the dirt and he will go like he used to go. So will that be an upgrade? Maybe. If they go back to single high, just sort of go ahead, Orlando. Yeah.
Can't go anywhere but up. But like, from what I know about Dan Quinn, and I hate to cut you off, Skip, but I just want to give you a little bit of my insight. What I know about Dan Quinn, he's a great, high-energy, positive guy, but I think you can be a positive if you want. If you don't have the Jimmys and the Joes, I don't care nothing about your X's and O's.
Okay, so I tweeted immediately when I heard this yesterday, can he bring 2014 Richard Sherman with him? Can he bring Bobby Wagner from 2014? Can he go back in a time machine? Can he get Cliff Averill? Can he get Bruce Irvin? Can he get Michael Bennett? Can he get any of them? Can he get Cam? Can he get Earl? No. We don't have anywhere near any of those guys, right? So where does this go? It's got to be better than Mike Nolan, who I wanted fired at midseason. It was a disaster. It was all-time embarrassment. It was arguably the worst defense in the history of the franchise. A franchise that once upon a time had a defense called Doomsday, long before Orlando played for the Dallas Cowboys. Even Orlando's defenses were there's one year I made a case that Orlando Scandrick was the MVP of the defense. That's how good it was, that he was dominating. And now this.
You know what I look at, if they're smart, they would draft another corner to go alongside Diggs.
Well, and again, at 10, you got Patrick Surtain, we saw last night. He's pretty good.
I don't know if any safeties are rated that high, but you definitely need to play that defense. You got to have guys that can lock. And if you don't,
the way that defense was built is they built it from the front to the back. So if you look at Sherm, they went and got big long corners with balls.
Yes.
Their big thing was making you take the long hard way. And defensive linemen, they were able to draft defensive linemen, and Dallas just hasn't. I mean, they drafted Randy Gregory, and he's finally coming along, but they don't have any interior defensive linemen. They drafted Jalen Smith really high, and he's been up and down. They don't have any safeties. They've shown the inability to draft the safeties. And let's go back to the 2020 draft. It was no purpose of drafting CeeDee Lamb except for trying to be cute.
That's what I told Skip.
No, it's because he's by far.
All right, they call it O, which is he is Orlando Scandrick. At that pick, at the 17th pick, you can't convince yourself to draft a safety at that role, at that spot. What is it? What is going to be? Grant Delpit, Xavier McKinney. Those were the highest safeties right then at that time frame. And I don't think that you can convince yourself of drafting anybody like that with the 17th pick. Now, that is not being cute. That's just being wise. Now, granted, you can go back to the trade back scenario, and maybe you get an extra pick. But who's to say Grant Delpit would have still been there, or Xavier McKinney? So there's so many nuances that can go with that. Now, in this particular draft, I can see the Cowboys drafting a cornerback if available, whether it be the Patrick Surtains of the world or the Caleb Farleys, whoever it may be that's high on your draft board. But I believe that the Cowboys still need to do best player available. So even if Devontae Smith is there, or anybody that you have high like a Kyle Pitts, a Rashawn Slater, whoever you have high on your draft board as it relates to the draft numbers or whatever the grade that you give, then you go with that. Don't get cute and then say, okay, just because we need, then we go into that spot. I think the wisest thing would be BPA, best player available, unless somebody trade up and give you a king's ransom for that spot, or you looking at it whereas, hey, the tags are touching on said player, and I know for sure I got 3 or 4 more other guys that I'm really high on as it relates to this draft, and you trade back. But I'm more of an aggressive mindset, get what you can get, meaning that you know for sure you like Christian Barmore, right? So you don't like him at the 10th pick, but you really like Surtain or you really like Caleb. You go draft those guys. Or if you really like Pitts, you go draft whatever the BPA is, and then you use whatever you can to get back into the first or move up in the second to get Barmore. I think that will be the wisest choice and decision from my, perspective looking from the outside in. But who knows how they have their draft board set up. If anybody know, let me know, post it down below. But when we look at the complete picture, Cowboys, we really going to have to really look into this draft and draft right. And that's why I believe Quinn is in here sooner than he is as it relates to later. Now, was Quinn the right choice? We will find out. Like I said, I would not give out my my coaching grade on him now. I'm going to have to sit back and see how everything flows. Because that's just the reality of it. We got so many variables. We do. We don't know how the Jones is going to do. And I really want to know whether or not what they're going to do with George Edwards. To me personally, just to me, he was the secret sauce for the Vikings. Go and look at their defense from 2014 to 2019. Matter of fact, you don't have to look that much farther. Look at 2019, where they was ranked at as relates to their total defense, and then just look at 2020, how far they fell off when he left. Now, here's the situation. I believe that George Edwards, collectively speaking, if granted or given the opportunity to be the defensive coordinator, this is just my thoughts. Him implementing his style and system, we would at least be top 10 defense. If you allowed him the chance and opportunity to be the defensive coordinator. But I know that this is a political game, politic game, and all of the other stuff that I'm not going to put out here to the world and the universe to really say what I really want to at this time, because it's not the right time or the moment right now. But we will find out what Quinn can do and what George Edwards is going to do as far as the future. Will he work with Quinn, or will Quinn work with him? That type of groove. Let's go.
Or the best player on the board.
But Skip,
I got no problem with that.
You didn't need offense. You got to be able to stop somebody.
Okay, but when he falls in your lap at 17, you had him in the top 5 on your board. I'm taking CD Lamb.
Well, Skip, you got enough kids. You don't want any more babies.
Okay.
You should have got you a defensive player, and then you'd have been Skip.
This is a very special baby.
Okay.
I can't get a baby when I got another teenage son and I just gave $100 million and Amari Cooper.
Okay, look, I got it. And by the way, Neville Gallimore in the interior, he's going to be a player for the University of Oklahoma. That's when you didn't.
But this is my problem, though, Skip. He's a 3-4 player.
Yeah.
You're talking about I need a one-gap guy that can get up and wreak havoc.
Right. You need Aaron. You see.
Hold on. Before they go into details of that, I think that Gallimore coming out of college, he can play both. He a 2-gapper, and he can play the 1. So, and he can shoot the gap, I meant to say. So I don't think that, it's one of those situations where he can only play in a 2-gap scheme. And just hear me out. Hear me out. Collectively speaking, those quick, faster defensive interior guys, it's nothing to them to transition over to just shooting the gap. There's nothing to it for them to do that. And I think that Gallimore, his release, his burst, his get off, it's there. It's there. And he got strength. So we'll find out. I think that he can play 1-gap principles.
The defense to be effective.
Okay, we'll just snap our fingers and get Aaron Donald. Okay? Maybe Jerry can just go buy him from the Rams in the offseason.
Oh, when you tell him, if you're going to play that style of defense, you need an Aaron Donald. You need a Sapp.
Okay.
You need a guy that's going to play that under tackle and can go wreak havoc in the backfield.
Okay, we don't have it. But guess what, ladies and gentlemen? An even worse story in the NFC East is the Philadelphia Eagles. So, Orlando Scandrick, what did you think of the firing of Doug Peterson, and what does it mean for Carson Wentz?
I think they're trying to do everything to save Carson and save
That's all I wanted to hear him say. Yeah, I heard the reports out there that they might keep Carson Wentz since they're getting rid of their coach or what have you, and the new coach, whoever they bring in, probably will be assigning the fact that, hey, I can help Carson out. I can see the potentials in Carson, all of those things. You guys get what I'm saying, right? Or, they trade him off and they send him over there to the Colts. Who knows, right? Who knows? All right, Cowboy Nation, here's my final thoughts on everything. I think that with Dan Quinn, by us going back to a 4-3, I think that it would at least be comfortable for the guys or the staff that we already have, the player, the depth charts that we already have. I think that with the hiring of Dan Quinn, we will refocus and shift our minds back to the interior, build from the interior on all the way out. I think we'll make investments for this 2021 draft, an interior, linebacker, as well as safety play. Now, it's a toss-up between LVE and Jalen Smith on how they can play this particular defense and style and these sorts of things. But I believe that the Joneses are not giving up on those two. They're not giving up on them. So I think that the new coaching staff will figure that thing out. They will. They have to at this point. Now, as far as the safety role and the safety situation, you guys already know my thoughts on that. If you really think that you need some safety to help this team out, do it in the free agency so that you know for sure it's a known commodity, meaning that we know what Justin Simmons can do, right? And I don't want to hear people say, well, hey, Law, where we can get the money. The money is out there. You can always finagle these contracts. Do not fall for the low-hanging fruit saying that we don't got the money. Matter of fact, last year we had the money. And even if you sign Dak Prescott to a long-term contract, it will actually help spread out the money because it won't be all of a big hit all at once. Now, with that being said, I'm not worried about the offensive side unless it's Dak Prescott, what they're going to do with that situation. Maybe, just maybe, if the Cowboys do decide to, in the second round or even in the first, if they do decide to shore up that offensive tackle situation or lineman, however you want to look at it, and they draft somebody, I can't get mad at them because then that's falling into the identity of the team. They're looking at it like, okay, last year, our thoughts of the team, that's from Jerry Jones, said that, hey, they built from the offensive line out, meaning that the offensive line was everything that they thought that it was the strongest point of the team, right? And then we, of course, the unforeseeable thing happened with Travis Frederick retiring all of a sudden. And then Lyle Collins with his hip situation and being out of shape. And when we looked at the fact that even Tyron Smith with his back, now we got more games. So I can tell you guys, I don't think that Tyron Smith is going to play 17 weeks. So they might look at this thing and say, okay, Quinn, let us get this one more pick with the offense as it relates to tackle or lineman, whatever we want to do with that. And then you can have the rest. The rest of the toys belong to you. That could flat out happen. We'll find out, Cowboy Nation. Remember my thoughts. My thoughts is to be aggressive, BPA, and if you're really falling in love with somebody, opposed to like, you draft or you trade back into the first to get that person. Be aggressive in that way. Don't look at the 9 or 10 picks that we have in this draft to say, I want them all. I need to hold on to them all. No, don't look at it that way. Look at it like, okay, let's see how we can package these things together, wheel and deal, move up a little bit, and get a known commodity like a Justin Simmons or the main kid over there in Jets. I forgot his first name. But you guys know what I'm talking about, the safety that's there. There's some safeties out here that you can really take a real good look at to help out this team. Post me your thoughts. Post me your concerns down below. Let's go, Cowboy Nation. Shout out to Dan Quinn for getting that job. Hopefully, he doing his homework so we can get this draft selection a whole lot better for the 2021 season, and we can start off on a good foot. Everybody, they need to work together, and he need to be friends with everybody on the staff as it relates to being on the same page, because we can't go through this, we didn't have continuity. So, Quinn, you grab a cup of coffee, grab a beer or something like that, with George Edwards, work that thing out with Maurice Lindquist and Al Harris, and find you a defensive line coach. Find you a good one. Find you a good one. That's been my time. I really thank you all for yours. And remember, you're listening to nothing but the best. Salute. We're out. Peace.